Welcome to this week's episode of Esports Wrap. I'm your host, Michael Amargon. And this week, we're going to be talking about something that, was another community suggestion, which was esports and contracts. This is mainly because of the whole Tfue situation that came about last week. For those who are unaware of the situation, I will briefly give it a summary, which is Tfue, a popular Fortnite player and streamer, also YouTuber in a sense, he is trying to get out of his contract with his esports team, FaZe, and has been using some very serious terms when it came to it. Now, when I say serious, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. But yes, so he used some fairly serious terms when inside of his lawsuit. Yes, he actually decided to sue FaZe to try and get out of said lawsuit. Inside said lawsuit included everything from it being a oppressive, I believe was his word, contract where FaZe took 80% of his funds from sponsorships and so on and so forth, and only gave him 20%, where they coerced him and forced him pretty much to live in a mansion, and inside that environment coerced him into drinking and also illegally betting. Inside of this, he also then said, during one of the things, they kind of pushed him to do certain things that he was not comfortable with, like for a video that he was recording where he ended up in a skateboarding accident and hurt his hands. Now, while it all sounds really, really bad, and for the most part, it is, that has to come with some measure of salt. And that's the reason why I actually didn't do anything about this last week, aside from the fact that I took last week off to really try and work some more on the stream in the back end side of stuff. Now, when it came to the truth behind this, there's a lot of he said, she said, but there's so much more than that. So apparently, for starters, the contract that Tfue actually signed was a starter contract, which to most persons when they start, it's something fairly similar, probably not as bad as this, but similar-esque, where, it does have down, that 80-20%, 80 supposed to be going towards the person creating the content, however. And that seemed to have been the case, where because the contract actually leaked, that's, the kind of stuff that we were able to see what it was. And if you want to, you can take a look. I think it's at The Break. That's the website that it was leaked to, and you can find the information there. I'm trying to keep this episode somewhat brief-ish. Thank you for the follow, Paladin Knight Prime. Welcome to the cookie pack. But a big number. See, here's the thing. Tfue makes millions of dollars. And so you would think that the revenue share that FaZe would have gotten was huge. But the thing about it is, FaZe says that they only ever received or took $60,000. Now, that number is small for a number of reasons. I should probably put my phone on to silent. Okay. So the reason why that's so why that number is so small is because for the most part, FaZe didn't actually take much money from Tfue. And what happened was, for the money that they did take, that was actually from a sponsorship deal that FaZe themselves gave to Tfue. Now, Tfue, one of the things inside there that I forgot to mention earlier was that they also were very restrictive as to which sponsorships Tfue could take, and that's standard because you do not want conflicting sponsorships when you're a player. That's like saying that I'm going to get sponsored by Red Bull and Monster and G Fuel, which are all energy sports drinks, and you're trying to put them inside the same shirt and inside the background and all that kind of stuff. So it does not really make sense in that part. And you're right. When you're making 800 plus subs a day, when you stream, $6,000 is not a whole lot. Yeah. And you've got the sponsors. So here's the thing. FaZe made Tfue. FaZe was averaging about 100 viewers a day, which is by far doing pretty well for yourself as an average Twitch streamer. Most persons, they say it's a good day when you're getting 3 to 10 people watching you. This guy was getting 100. But at the same point, he was not really that well known, especially when you had Ninja really taking off and like really going like hard. Thank you for the follow, Dadel's Cypress. Welcome to the Cookie Press. Oh, welcome to the Cookie Pack. And thank you, Mewing Mink. Welcome to the Cookie Pack. I also see you there watching Esports Bahamas. Welcome. Now, who am I speaking to? I'm speaking... Harry Brown, why am I speaking to myself? I'm speaking to you guys. And by the way, thank you for following. Welcome to the Cookie Pack. Now, when it comes to the situation of how Fuse really built up Tfue, FaZe Banks, the guy who was pretty much managing things, in a sense. Now, he found Tfue and was really trying to push him ahead. And because people didn't really know about him, aside from H1Z1, which is where people really got to know Banks and Ninja and stuff like that as well. But Banks decided to, really push forward. Thank you for following Rex Boy. Welcome to the Cookie Pack. Now, Banks really pushed forward, and at the time, Clokey, he was one of the he's now a fairly well-known Fortnite player as well, also a part of FaZe. Now, when Tfue was brought up, because Banks said, Clokey, I want you to try this guy, just play some games with him for a few days, just see how he is. The immediate response from Clokey was, this guy's garbage, I don't want him, you don't want him, let's just not do this. But he still ended up doing the games with him. Ooh, a White Carlton. Anyway, that being said, a lot of things happened after that. Obviously, Tfue became very well known. He was then introduced to something called Fortnite Fridays, which at the time was pretty much something that was on the level of world championships and cups and stuff like that back then. And that only happened because of FaZe and him being a part of FaZe. Anyway, fast forward. The lawsuit happens, and, well, FaZe is not really that happy about it. Banks isn't happy about it. He doesn't take it personal, but he also feels very hurt and betrayed by it. As people probably should, because when you really take a look at it, again, he made it sound like they were taking hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, from him when they've only ever taken $60,000. But there's also a clause in his contract, and this is where it kind of gets really finicky. There's a clause in his contract that pretty much says that even if they don't take it then and there, it is still owed to them, meaning that they can still come back well afterwards and say, hey, you owe us X amount of $100. And see, that's also another point of contention, because part of the new contracts that FaZe tried to get Tfue to sign was much more in favor of Tfue as a gamer and content creator, because FaZe then got new management, you could say, and that new management, they would nudge to say this should probably be changed because this beginner contract is he's doing much better than what was expected, and he's doing better than what he actually deserves from this beginner contract. Let's get him onto an actual proper contract that's made and tailored just for him. This was shot down numerous times, apparently, to the point where they offered him $1 million a year with 0% coming back to FaZe. They also offered him the ability to, neg on any of the past stuff from the previous contract. So everything inside of there would have been like just nullified, and they could have just moved on. So because he hasn't done that, he still possibly owes several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And at the same time, all of his content that he's put on Twitch and YouTube is now owned by FaZe. And they can technically force him to delete some of it or close down his channel on a whole. So there's a lot of really weird stuff going on with this. And because people are being so secretive about it, to the point where, Banks said that they were going to release, Tfue requested FaZe to release the contract in his 2-minute something long videos, pretty much, where he was saying that he's doing this because of the injustice of the esports community, and that, contracts like this should not be fine. And he's fighting for the little guy, essentially. Thank you for following Ice Block Fails. Welcome to the cookie pack. Now, I say all that, but there's still more happening with it. And when I say that, it's because, all those contracts that FaZe tried to get, again, Tfue said no. And so he's in a very precarious situation. That video that he made also put him at first as a hero-esque type of figure for, the lower end esport professional, or those that just recently got signed and still haven't quite proven themselves, kind of thing. But we found out some information after that video was posted that shed some more light onto the subject, which was that he's actually planning, Tfue was, and the reason why is most likely the reason why he did not want to change to a new contract, because then, for starters, the contract that he started with was a 3-year contract. That is bad by almost any definition of the word. And even persons like Ninja say that you should never sign a contract that's more than a year old. Hey, Black Nebula guys, how you doing? But yeah, you should never sign a contract that's more than 1 year old, because you don't want to be locked into a situation that's really not something that you should be in, like a starter contract. A starter contract should only and really truly be for a year, because within that time you should have had enough time to really prove your worth. Yeah, a 3-year contract is wild. And, Rex, that's fine if I'm talking to no one. You can still hear me. They can still hear me. And I'm making good content. So, it's all good. But, then we actually got down to the nitty-gritty of things. And the contract was leaked. Now, FaZe Banks had said that they were going to release the contract, but it took them a few days, and we still didn't see any contract, and so it got leaked to the Blaze, like I mentioned earlier inside this episode. Ooh, 6 months? I would not say 6 months. 6 months is sometimes a little too short to actually really and truly show your worth. It also depends on just how much they invest in you as when they sign you. So for example, if they sign you and then, just leave you to be as is, that could be bad. And since you have bad numbers, then, it's not so great. But then again, if you're in that kind of situation anyway, where the team that signed you is not really helping you, you probably should not be in there anyway. So you might have a point. White Pancake says, I listen on occasion. Rex doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, thank you for continuously listening, White Pancakes. I do appreciate that. Now, getting onto it. Tazil says, but when you got the skills like I did with my rogue tut, that just makes the dollar signs. I mean, if you got the skills, you gotta use it to somehow. You make some money from it. Like, that's the whole point of esports and stuff nowadays. So, anyway, getting back on topic. With this 3-year contract, and Tfue deciding not to re-sign, which would have pretty much nullified everything from that he's actually complaining about. It leaves some weird questions, like the fact that he tried to start his own esports organization. Well, sorry, correction. He's going to be trying to create his own esports organization. And Rexboy, yes, I do have YouTube. It is youtube.com/MOAR cookies. You should probably be able to watch the stream there as well if you want right now. But all of the past episodes as well, they're up on there. And well, the majority, we did lose a few in the very beginning. But the majority of our episodes, for the most part, are right on YouTube. Anyway, so yeah, he tried his, so you're right, Tizel. He did try to do his own tournaments before all of this. Tfue was actually signed by an organization before this, so none of this should really come as a surprise for him, because he should have been on a starter contract for that organization as well. Paladin Knight says that would be interesting to see a new org come from this, actually. And Paladin also says, despite all the bad stuff from it. Now, yeah, I kind of figured that was you, Chuck. Once you started mentioning Rogue, like, I only really know one Rogue that I really used to fight with back in World of Warcraft. And, those are some good days. I am glad we did the rankings back then. So we actually knew just like how we fared worldwide wise and North America wise. Because if we didn't do that, I wouldn't have known that we were actually as good as we were. But going forward, honestly, in that video that Tfue actually also did, he stated that he told his lawyer not to include the drinking and the betting and so on and so forth in the lawsuit, and that it should have just really been the contract. That kind of stuff doesn't just go out there in a lawsuit, because it also has to get vetted by the person before it goes out. That's standard legal procedure. So somewhere along the lines, someone would have had to agree to it. Therein comes another part of the issue. Because it seems that Tfue, being a younger person, his parent, well, one of his parents, I don't know about his mother, but his dad seems to have a very influential role when it comes to what's happening with his contract. Because I think, and a lot of people think, it's his father that's really trying to push a lot of this and trying to make him branch off and be a more free player, I guess you could say. And FaZe took this very similarly to what happens with sports contracts. And they brought up someone like LeBron James, where you don't just have him join a team, learn what they do, and then create his own team. Like, that's a no-no. And that's kind of what happened in this situation. Tfue joined this team, learned how FaZe did their stuff, and is now trying to start up his own thing. That piece of information comes from Tfue's brother. So the information is probably solid. Now, again, this is a lot just to like go through. And I say all this to say, when it comes to esports contracts or sports contracts on a whole, Pilot Knight says, can't blame the dad for that, honestly. Granted, he might not know how much about it actually works, but just thought it was a good idea. He probably did. And again, it's not a bad thing for parents to be pushing their kids into getting into what they're really interested and passionate about. The issue apparently came when the CEO of FaZe went down to Florida to actually try to talk to Tfue and his parents about the contract and try to actually get them a better contract. During that conversation, apparently it's his dad. Well, according to the CEO of FaZe, said that he grew some concerns because of how the dad spoke about his twilight days, I guess you could say, of when he was in the music industry some 20-something years ago. And the CEO felt that the dad was trying to push his ambitions onto Tfue. You know, living vicariously through your child kind of situation, and that became worrying for him. Now, if that's actually the case, I don't know. I can't say, but that's what a lot of people are saying that they feel is the case. And hey, content, Rex, is, if I don't produce it like it's got 1 million subs already, then how am I supposed to get there? Like, you don't give out something that's low quality and hope for something better, man. It's as simple as that. Now, when you have all of that happening, so you have lies, you have, albeit he did have a bad contract. Like, no one's denying that. FaZe is saying they had a bad contract with him. As soon as the new manager came in, they tried to swap over the contract. Like, the only real truth is that Tfue wanted out of this contract, and it was a bad contract. That's it. Everything else was pretty much a lie. And so when you talk about contracts, you really need to take a step back and take a look at how these contracts were actually supposed to be built. And they're very similar to how sports contracts are made. And that's, you know, you find someone in high school, college, the streets, wherever it is, and you like what you see. They got the skills, they got the passion, you know, they have that spark that catches your interest as a scout or, you know, a manager or whatever it is. And so you try to sign them, and you want to make sure that they do well and that they actually push themselves. So you start them off not at a very high contract. No, because that's not going to do it. You got to start them at a smaller contract so that you can see how they're going to level up. They then know that, you know, after this amount of time, I can renegotiate for a better contract if I actually do well. And if you don't do well, then you either run the risk of getting cut or staying on the same contract level. If you do worse, then you're probably going to get cut. But someone like Tfue, who was actually doing much better, you know, he had all means to be able to redo that contract. The worrying thing for me is that while FaZe said that, you know, they were trying to get this contract redone with Tfue, on an interview that was with Keemstar on Drama Alert. That's what the name is, Drama Alert. The CEO stated that there are still some persons in FaZe on that contract, which means there are reasons why those persons have not switched over as well. That's concerning. For a number of reasons. One, is it that they still are on this beginner contract and just don't want to move off? Or two, well, move off because they want to finish up their 3-year contract kind of thing, because the new management for FaZe happened in last year, 2018. So depending on when persons actually join, they may still be within that 3-year contract. They might not be doing as well as Tfue, which may be the reason why they haven't tried. Well, FaZe hasn't tried to reach out and change up their deals. if that's the case, and you're saying this contract is bad, then you probably need to change this contract, dude. But if that's not the case and they're willing to continue along with it and just run the course, and that's something that they're willing, that's a different issue. But for the most part, 1 year is pretty much the maximum amount of time that you should really sign a contract for. 80-20 split in favor of the athlete or the content creator is normal for a starter. Again, once you do well and you can renegotiate, things can sometimes go to 90-10, or in one of the instances, 100%, all towards the creator or athlete. Now, when it comes to brands, one of the things that was stated inside of this was that Tfue wanted the ability to freely go with any sponsor, and he felt restricted by FaZe, and that they were restricting him on which sponsors he could go with. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is actually something that's responsible. That I would say, that's being responsible. And Tazel says, wonder if Cloak will follow. If so, FaZe will have a rough time on Fortnite Cup showing, since the two of them always stream together. And I'm going to actually get to Cloaky in just a moment. Because there is news what's happening with them as well. And but for the right now, Cloaky is still with FaZe. But when it comes to sponsorships, one of the reasons why Tfue is doing this is because he wants to just go and be sponsored by whoever. And so overall, Tfue is actually hurting his lawsuit as people find out more and more about this, because it seems that the lawyer and Tfue and his dad, or whatever mix of that, worked this out to try and get it to the point so that no matter what, by hook or crook, this contract is outable and it's deemed illegal. One of the things that they also tried to say is that FaZe is in violation of the agent agreement, which is stating that, in California, the employer cannot also be your agent kind of situation, and that if you actually are an agent, you need to be registered. And FaZe is not registered as an agency. They're registered as a business. So that's a little sketch, because that's how a lot of esports organizations are actually set up. They go out, they find sponsorships, they find events, they do this, they do that, and they do it all to try and make their players better and also make the organization some money. Basically, kind of a loophole. But we don't know how that one's really going to work out. And that's part of the issue. So, because all of it's kind of done so under the radar, everyone's just kind of trying to piece things together. And so we're finding these little bits of information here and there. And then as they come out, there's new information that comes out to either combat them, knock it off, or outright admit to, them happening. Remember when I was also talking about them, FaZe apparently pressuring him to do sports? Yeah, apparently that never really happened. And Ninja, I'm going to mention Ninja a little bit, because Ninja is actually someone who knows Tfue. Like, they've played together, they know each other fairly well. He himself stated, and I think it was also on that interview, stated that, Tfue is actually known to be a bit of a wild child. He's been known to do backflips off of bridges. I think when FaZe brought him on and brought him to Hollywood, he jumped off of the reservoir as like some form of celebration or something like that. So he's known for doing crazy stuff, which is probably one of the reasons why he tried. Well, he says that he told his lawyer to keep that out of there. There was also a video of him when he was age 16 drinking, and that's before he was ever signed into FaZe. So there's that as well. So that's probably another reason why he didn't do that one. There's nothing really to say too much about the betting, so that one's kind of still floating around. But Yeah. When it comes to this kind of stuff, folks, like, in all truth and all actuality, make sure you read contracts, because you need to do a little bit more than just believing in the person that's coming to you with a contract. Read the contract, take it to a lawyer. It may cost you some money. Yes, for them to go through it and advise you of it, it'll probably cost you a few $100s, if that. But if you're actually serious about this and you're going forward, it may end up saving you a bunch of money. Here's an example that I personally experienced when it came to contracts and content creation. During the whole before YouTube rechanged the way how and the amount that was required to become a YouTube partner, I was partnered with YouTube as a content creator. Now, during that time, networks, there are these things called networks on YouTube that would try to reach out to persons that they get a high amount of persons watching their videos or view counts or whatever it is. And they will try to get you to agree to contracts. These aren't always so good. I was approached by, I think, about 3 of these types of networks. And almost all of them pretty much tried to say that they would be taking control of all of my past content and giving me a split of the share of the revenue. Now, I didn't agree to any of these because I did not feel it was in my best interests for the type of content that I wanted to create. Surprise, surprise, when YouTube changed up stuff, a lot of these networks started to fall and crumble. So what that would have meant for my content, I have no idea. But, you know, when it comes down to it, sometimes it's good to trust your gut. Sometimes you still need a little bit more than that. With this one, I trusted my gut. I read over the contract. I trusted my gut. I said, you know what? This doesn't feel right. I want to be able to create the type of content that I want. I want to, you know, all of my funds that I might get, that kind of thing. And maybe that's a way for you to start out as well. If you're really serious about this and you're doing it, see how far you get. If you do well and someone approaches you and they're actually a reputable company, then you take it to that next step of reading the contract and going to a lawyer. Now, when it comes to whether esports contracts are good or bad, I will simply state this. A good contract can make you. Much like what it did with Tfue. He got signed. He was brought in. They liked him. Well, they liked him. They brought him in. They signed him. The day they signed him, his viewers skyrocketed. The number of subs he got skyrocketed. Tfue, it's no small estimate to really and truly say they made his career what it is right now. Like I mentioned earlier, a good team will bring you and advance you. FaZe, they brought him into Fortnite Fridays. That was known to create like high profile players. And people would soar overnight as soon as they got into there, because that was an elite tournament type of situation. And again, that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't a part of FaZe. So that's that element as well. When it comes to sponsorships, sometimes you can get a good sponsor by yourself. There are many ways to do it, especially nowadays, but your numbers have to be up there. Not only that, sometimes sponsors don't want to go to individuals. They prefer working with organizations. So for ones like that, you will never get a sponsorship from them. Whereas if you're part of a team, you may. Next up, when it comes to, well, I already talked about events. I already talked about sponsorships. I already talked about views and like content and stuff like that. for the most part, that covers it. I know there's more stuff to it, but to sum it up, a team can help you or break you, but a good team will make you and try to do the most that they can to make things easier for you. A bad team, you don't want that. So this is where that beginner contract really comes in, because this is your way to see how they actually run their business, see how they do their training, see how they actually treat the rest of their people. This lets you talk to the other players inside the teams that have been there longer than you have, and you can really get an idea for the place. It's kind of like your probationary period, that 3 months before you, well, right after you join a job. This is the chance that you actually get to really learn how things go. And if you see them going badly, you know you need to get out of there. So, in my opinion, contracts with esports, for the most part, they're good. But they can be bad, much like what Tfue had to deal with. But unfortunately, the way how this conversation started out and was brought into the light about contracts was one that's rife with lies, deception, an actual bad contract, which was grossly exaggerated and lied about, and just pure betrayal between both players and owners and teammates. And stuff like this can now hurt the persons that you play with, especially if you do something what's happening with Tfue, because, and this is the part where I'm talking about Cloudy. Cloudy originally, like I mentioned earlier, did not want anything to do with Tfue, because Cloudy was actually the team leader. He ran the team, and now he plays doubles or duos with Tfue in Fortnite. And this became an awkward situation in the World Championships just not so long ago, because, surprise, surprise, they still ended up playing together, because if they didn't do that, they would not have had this another teammate to really work with who they know so well and they could trust. So you have Tfue, who's no longer part of FaZe, and a guy who's in FaZe and is loyal to FaZe, who's partnering with a guy who's betraying FaZe. And it's not a good situation. Now, it also seems that Cloudy has taken in Tfue quite literally. Like, Tfue is now living in Cloudy's home, at least during this qualifier situation or whatever. I don't know. We don't know the full details of it. All we know is that, they're living together. And apparently, if I read this article correct, Cloaksy, let's see, he said on Monday, that stream starts up tomorrow morning, so today, some news too. And so a lot of people thought it was going to be about Tfue. Now, once he went live, quote, he revealed that he had gotten tons of messages from, presumably, FaZe Clan staff saying that he should not talk about this stuff on air. He did let slip that Tfue will be moving in with him in the near future. Unfortunately, we do not have a clip of the moment he said that. This is all still a quote. And, however, Cloaksy did read from a script that Cloaksy is in talks with FaZe Clan to figure out his future. Now, the figuring out his future part is very cryptic, because from what it seems like, he still wants to continue his partnership with Tfue. But FaZe Clan will probably try to get him to stop that, or at least keep his distance at some point, depending on the World Cup situation. Now, if Cloaksy gets in good terms and perhaps a better contract, his own contracts are a little bit unknown, he can maybe keep teaming up with Tfue and remain in the FaZe Clan at the same time. Or, worst comes to worst, he might be trying to leave FaZe Clan and join up with Tfue. So, I don't know, folks. Honestly, I wish this conversation had come up with a better kind of light, I really and truly do. But you can't predict everything, and yeah. So if you're looking to go pro, just listen to this episode and really think about your options, because you don't want to be in a similar situation as to what Tfue went through, and then what he's now having to put the team and teammates that he was with now through. There's a lot of vitriol happening over on Twitter between most parties, and you can probably check it out there. Like, Twitter is the stomping ground for pretty much anything like this. So there's that. Now, that's it for this episode of Esports Wrap. If you guys liked it, feel free to give a follow, feel free to give a subscribe, or a like, wherever it is that you're doing and whatnot. If you missed any part of this episode, we have our episodes up on MOAR Cookies, MOARcookies.com. And we also will have our podcast, which is our audio versions of them, up pretty much everywhere. I'm still working on SoundCloud. I know I've said that for like the past month now. But we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Playcasts, pretty much everywhere. And you can listen to any of our past episodes there as well. And don't forget, Esports Wrap will be back next week, Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our sister show, which is MOAR Tech, will be on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And feel free to check into any of our gaming nights that we're going to be having, hopefully this week, where we're going to be probably playing a mixture between Rocket League and League of Legends. We're playing between the two leagues. See what I did there? See what I did there? Anyway, folks, that's it for this episode. Like I said, keep it savvy.